Okay, here we are. It's turn 7 for the Russians, which is to say 2 p.m., February the 8th, 1807. Poissy Eylau. That's where we're at. And right, let's see what's happened. The Russians are doing what they can to plug the gap because, of course, the French broke through here. We've got because they did a cavalry breakthrough. There's the dragoons there, which are permanently disordered, and we've got cuirassiers up here. Big hole here, so the Russians here. Now, there was a Russian artillery unit there, but the Russian commander decided some rearrangement was being called for. So what he's done is he's refused he's squared off the flanks here by producing what are they called, protected flanks under V and B. So these chaps here, which are facing that way, as we can see, they have no flank there if they're attacked there, and the same thing, which is the same thing as is going on down here, because of course what they're anticipating is they're anticipating a cavalry attack coming straight down at them in the next turn. Because all they did was change facing, that doesn't involve movement of free facing change, so that means you can retain your stationary status, which is what they've done there. The artillery, which was facing this way, was considered just too frail, so it was horse artillery as well, so it was quickly manoeuvred over here and was deployed to such as to be able to fire into the jolly old dragoons there. Okay, just one shot, but who knows? That means the dragoons have got enemy close range, so they're going to have to test because they're being fired on. Let's see. Osterman Tolstoy, with his exhausted corps, basically. He was able, they're not able to charge the enemy, but he was able to move his cavalry forward here, his dragoons and his hussars, the light cavalry here. They were able to move forward into sort of blocking positions, basically, to stop these dragoons, should they go into command anytime soon, to stop them from being able to just waltz around down here, and also anything else that wants to sort of rumble down here, and then in a subsequent turn charge Kamensky or Bagavut in the rear. Okay, they're definitely going to get in their way. We've also got some more of Kamensky's infantry here, one there and one there. They're also down that way, facing in that direction, because no great threat is expected to come down here from the French, because they've basically got nothing left to do it with. Let's see, these guns were somewhat repositioned so that they could, they were just moved, rotated, so that they could fire in this direction here. That one wasn't, so that one became stationary, so that's Kamensky. His division's in good shape, so he's got no problem coming into stationary, and so he's going to be firing there. But they're all, none of them are at close range, they're all long range, and they haven't got much to fire at. All they can really fire at is the jolly old some of them can fire at the infantry. Yes, they can. Right, okay, so there's that, and some can only fire at the artillery. What else is going on? They're taking a morale test because they've got close range fire coming in from these chaps here. They're not stationary. They can't be because they, at least he can't be. What about him? What is he? That's corps artillery from Davout. No, sorry, it's not stationary. It could become stationary next turn. That one couldn't. Exhausted division. Anyway, only plinking away with one shot. There we go. But there's a possibility that they could cause them to become disordered. Okay. Let's see. What else? So we've described that lot. Then elsewhere. Oh, right. The Cossacks, as I said, Osterman Tolstoy at least had he put himself in a very central position, so he was able to move quite a few troops. And the jolly old Cossacks, those are the chaps, they've moved up a bit as well to just sort of contribute what they can up there. Again, they can't charge the enemy because that marker there marks the exhausted division, but they can at least get in the way. All right, and then up here we've got the plucky, I keep calling them the fake grenadiers. They're the grenadiers that the authors of the scenario chose not to give the status of morale 6-2. So apparently they just like pointy hats. They're not particularly grenadier-like. But those chaps have been doing very well. Absolutely. And so they're going to... they've spun around a bit. There was a free-facing change. They remained stationary, kept their stationary status, and they're going to give a good old fusillade to the jolly old cuirassier there. There are opportunities that the Russians could be giving massive amounts of musket fire to some enemies, but have chosen not to. Actually, I had thought that was going on there, but they're simply out of musket range, so forget that. They could, for example, they could be firing on people here, but to do so would... they can't fire at the French, they're too far away. Sorry, the cuirassier, they're too far away. They could fire at those chaps, because within this sort of this sort of positioning, they can fire sideways as well. But that invites them to fire back at them. And the one thing the Russians don't want to do at the moment is take any casualties, because that just helps contribute to a French victory. Okay, which is also the same reason that these guns are not firing on those guns there, because they would invite the guns to fire back at them. And it's also the same reason they could blast away with a huge amount of firepower at those chaps there, but that would also mean that they could fire back at them. And if they got lucky, they could get maybe one of the hits that they need. So we're not going to tempt fate. It is an interesting situation because, of course, it occurs to me that this has certainly happened several times before in Volley and Bayonet, where you get to a situation where you want to, like sort of in one sort of alternative universe, Kamensky here, for example, with his as yet only slightly besmirched division. He's got one hit on it with a total of 9 hits. He can take. He's taken 1, so he's got 8 more hits. So if the Russians wanted to jinx the French chances of victory by simply retreating rather. Wait a minute, that's not a bad that's not a bad strategy, as long as they couldn't be followed up by anyone. But the idea was no, they're going to hang on to their stationary status. Thank you. They'd rather have that. I'm going to have to pause for a sec. I had to tidy things up slightly there. No, more to the point is what was going on over here. That's right. So they're choosing not to fire at the French, because if they do, it means that the French can fire back at them. And I'm sure that there's some sort of deeply well-researched reason for that, but I'm not entirely sure what that is simulating. Remember, in Volley and Bayonet, this whole concept of counterattacking, in other words, the enemy being able to fire at you when it's not their turn. They can only do it if they're in close range or if they're being fired upon. Anyway, let's not digress too much. Okay, so let's get on with it. All right, the next thing up is morale tests. Well, look at that, of which there are only 2. So those chaps are testing because they're being fired on. They are being fired on from the flank, which is a -1 on their morale. Other than that, their morale 5. Let's see what they get. Ooh, look at that. They failed their morale test. Now, what does that mean? Well, of course, let's see here. Right, so they become disordered. There we go. All right. So now, let's see. They can't suffer another disorder result as a result of firing, but it does mean now in the French turn that these chaps here, who are, they can't charge them because they're exhausted division. So I don't know. Well, anyway, it contributes to, it's got to be good for the French somehow. Let's just leave it at that. Okay. And then over there, we have the permanently disordered dragoons, French dragoons, and they have to test their morale because they've got these horse artillery of unlimbered right in front of them. Okay, and their morale is fine, clearly. Don't even have to add that up. Well, I suppose we could, just for form, because they are morale 5. They rolled a 2. Let's see. Let's see. They're disordered, so that means they're morale 4. being fired at from the flank, are they? Even if they were, that would make them morale 3, so that, no, they're fine, they're fine, they're fine. Okay, that's your morale tests. So I don't think I need to stop the camera. We'll just go straight on, segue very smoothly into jolly old combat. So let's see, we've got here, these are all we can see because on the heavy units, I put 3 figures. Right, so let's see. Well, clearly we're all within range, and clearly none of us are within close range. It's just a question of who can they shoot at. So some of them can, let's see, measure that a bit more precisely. Can they shoot at the infantry over here? Definitely, right. They've got a clear fire lane, so they don't have a clear enough fire lane to shoot at the infantry, so they'll have to shoot at the artillery, okay? So we've got, they're all long range, so I can roll all 3 of them at the same time, doesn't make any difference. And they'll be firing at the infantry there. See what we get. There are no saving throws here. What an absolute shower. Oops. Right. That's just measuring stick there. And then we got these chaps firing at those, hitting on 6s, but they're oh no, they don't get saving throws from heavy fire from heavy batteries. And they got a 6. Ooh, that's a hit. Ooh, that's a bingo. Right, let's sort that out. Yeah, so there's our hit. And of course, old Moran, where is he? Where's the chap himself? There he is over there. I need a dead figure, don't I? Yeah, because there was nothing on there to show that they, for example, cannot become stationary, exhausted division, and all that sort of thing. Right, okay. And then we got close range fire coming in at those chaps from here, so they will be hitting on 4, 5, 6, and there's 1 hit there. All right, so who have they hit? Kaminsky. Let's see. Bielozersk. So they've got 1 hit. Right, let's do that. Right, so 2 hits on them. That means that Kaminsky has now got 7 more hits it will take to exhaust him. And because they have become, of course, disordered through their morale test. I should have done this at that time. They immediately lose their stationary status. Okay. All right. Just follow the dice. Follow the dice. Here we go. We got 1 shot at the cavalry, which could evade, as it were, to get a saving throw if they wanted to. But they don't need to, because they missed anyway. Okay, desultory fire. Then finally we have I can probably reach it from here. We have the grenadiers up there on the hill. Zoom in, boing, against the cuirassiers. All right. So, let's see. A lot of Russian hopes riding on this one. Let's go ahead. There we are. Q. No saving throws. Russians are not disordered. The French cavalry can retreat 6 inches for each saving throw they choose to take. Okay, they've got 1 hit. So they either take that hit or they can retreat 6 inches and roll for a saving throw. Let's see. Now that gets a bit congested, doesn't it? I don't know if there's anything in the rules that describes in detail, you know, what happens if they try to retreat away from. Maybe I should look that up, because it's easy to sort of think, well, there's nothing in the rules about that, and then you read it and it turns out there is. My point is, let's get the old measuring stick. My point is, right, this is the special maneuver whereby cavalry can say, I'd like a saving throw, please. So what they have to do is retreat 600 yards away from the enemy. But of course, so if they do that, there's the enemy. If we go from center to center of each unit, so if they go 600 yards that way, that would mean that that back corner of their unit would be sort of pretty much on top of Augereau there. Well, happily, that's not too much of a problem because they are all just commanders, so I could move them back to there. They're all just commanders, and you're supposed to be able to move them freely if they sort of getting in the way of your forces. Although, of course, to do that, I'd have to make sure that that didn't then break the chain of command in some crucial way. Right, so there's Murat, he's commanding them, he's following them around. D'Espagne, because D'Espagne himself is back here commanding them, so he had to go forward. Okay, so I can obviously put him next to them no matter where they go. And then we've got, let's see, we've got Beaumont. Okay, where are the rest of Beaumont? What has he got? Dragoons. Oh, that's those chaps down there. He's got to get down there next turn. Okay, and then we have Augereau. Okay, and he's really not... he would like to be, I would think, close... No, in between that unit and that unit, so you can command both of them. I'm sure we can make this happen. Let's do it, because I don't think I want those cuirassiers to get hit, because most units, they can only take 2 hits. Okay, that's how I fit. It says they have to retire directly away from the firing unit, and there are no other details on how that works. And I've always played it that they pull back facing the enemy rather than turn tail and face the other way. According to me, it's not indicated in the rules. So yeah, anyway, there we go. I did that, let me think, I'm just thinking back here, and I did that when I filmed Brienne, which is the battle I played before this, and a great number of scholars looked at that on YouTube, a great number of what I will call Volley and Bayonet experts with, good lord, I mean, 30 years experience playing the game, and I don't think anyone ever said, when the cavalry withdraw like that or retire like that for the saving throw, you really need to turn them around and have them face the other way. No. So, okay, that's what we did. So they pulled back their 600 yards, but, right, then you rolled to see if they actually got a saving throw. So in other words, did that hit scored by the Grenadiers, is it going to go home? And it is not. Sorry, wait a minute. It is. The saving throw failed. 456 would have been required, so they were hit. Let's mark that. Okay, so that then is the end of the Russian turn 7. Let's get back into position here. Maybe I can... there we go. We get more sort of an overall view of the battlefield. Let's see, coming down here. Okay, maybe pinch it a bit. There we go. Is it going to do better? Yeah. And okay, and also I was taking a look over there. I actually sorted out, sort of down in that department down there, sorted out who was who for the losses, and we can see that the in terms of units actually being removed from the battle, we can see that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 French infantry brigades, 2 cavalry, and 2 artillery. And then for the Russians, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 brigades infantry, 1 unit of cavalry, and no artillery. These figures here are nothing to do with the battle. They're just other figures. So yeah, those are the 3. That's Bagovut, that's Osterman Tolstoy, and that's Von der Ostensacken. Yeah, that's right. Okay. Right. So let's see. Now things are getting very interesting at this point, of course, because we can see down here. I was thinking of going into some detail at this point. Let's return to the normal zoom. There we go. We can see down here that still got the big old hole here, of course. So we've got French cavalry that can... All right, one little thing I cooked up. What was it I came up with? The idea was that we would somehow arrange it so that they got charged from two sides. They're not flanked because of their position, but we get 2 units of cavalry in there, so there'll be 8 melee dice against. They are Jaegers, so they have 6 melee dice, not 7, and of course they're a morale of 5. And the French are going to be going in there with morale of 6. Or even they have got morale of 7. If they can get in there and if they could cause them to lose the melee, become disordered, then if they were being hit on that side and that side, they would have to retreat in that direction down there. That would take them through these chaps here. And although, wait a minute, there is something, isn't there, about moving through 2 opposite sides? And those sides are not opposite, are they? I mean, if you want to get really technical about this, yeah, if they're hit squarely on both sides, maybe the French could shift their mass somehow so that they're deliberately trying to drive them, as you might imagine, into them. If they can do that somehow, that would, of course, disorder them. And if at the same time the French not only charge them from 2 places, two positions, but they also, for example, get this cavalry here to charge that unit there, in the hope that it will be disordered by the time the melee is resolved. You see, that could happen. It's a gamble, but it could happen. So if that then happened, then, you know, things are starting to disintegrate down here to a great degree for the Russians. But of course, the French do only have 2 turns left. They've got the 8th and 9th turn left. Over here, they've still got to cause 2 more casualties on von der Ostensacken. So to do that, they could go in with, they could. I don't know. That's a tough one. Well, they've got this cavalry back here, of course, so it's very quickly going to be very quickly. Surely it is already time to just say, send in the cavalry and let the dice fall where they may, because the thing is that if they kept them back, so if they just keep them back, so they've got 1 division that is not exhausted. If they kept them back, if they sent that division, for example, if it just went straight in there, they got 4 melee dice. So as long as they hold their nerve and they don't become disordered in the morale test. And they are only morale 5, of course. So if they went straight in, they've each got 4 melee dice. Yes, they've got 7 melee dice each. So they're going to take a clobbering. But what they've got to try to do is to get those 2 hits on this division here to exhaust it. Then they will have accomplished their mission. Yes. So, right. So that's what's going on there. And then down in terms of Kamensky, as I say, highly unlikely that he can be exhausted. He can take 7 more hits. Let's see, in the French turn, they can't become stationary, but they can become stationary. So if they were stationary and hitting on short range, that's a pretty potent recipe there. So they could get hit with some serious damage. They are disordered. They can't be charged by them, but they can move forward and shoot at them. So they're all, chipping away at Kamensky here. Same thing with them; they could be brought forward. So it's. I think that the French have still, as we say, got everything to play for, and as I said before, that means that the scenario, at least the way it's turned out, is extremely finely balanced. So then I say, here's to it. All right then, let's see. It is French turn 8, which is 3 p.m. February the 8th, 1807, at Eylau. And yes, things are definitely heating up, as one might imagine. Towards the end of the battle here, the French only have this turn and one more in which to exhaust every Russian division, of which there are 4. And they've already exhausted one of them. And, well, they're basically throwing everything they can into the fray. And we have no fewer, I think I counted them. Let's see, we've got no fewer than 8 French cavalry brigades have charged the enemy. Yes, they've unleashed the cavalry finally. And in some instances, it's sort of a death or glory type of attack, and in some instances they've got rather more of a chance of success, so we shall see. And as you can see from the number of dice around, I've managed to scratch together sufficient dice for every situation. So as we can see, it's kind of an interesting graphic representation, isn't it? Because you can see sort of all along the French line, basically, a sort of reasonable amount of fire going on, combat, I should say, going on. Lots of batches of 4s, of course, because of the cavalry charging in. And then down here, the French have managed to put together no fewer than 6 dice against these chaps here, who stand a very good chance of, well, they've got a morale test as well, so they might even rout before the dice are thrown down there. So things are definitely heating up at the end of the line there for Kamensky's chaps. And right, well, let's go through in a little bit of detail. Yeah, so they've basically all gathered around, and these chaps here, even though they're in an exhausted division, they are able to advance towards the enemy, but not make contact with them, but they can certainly shoot at them. So they moved that far forward. They're disordered, so there we go. So that's what's happening there. Then these chaps here moved forward a little bit just to make themselves slightly more useful, but not so far forward as to get tangled up with them. They can't charge anyone, so all they could possibly do is get in the way of the enemy. So I'm sure they won't end up doing much at all for the rest of the battle. And one of the main things I wanted to do was to move them slightly in from the edge of the table so they'd stop snagging on my shirt. Right. Then over here, oh, that's right. Udelay has sort of gathered together his forces. They probably won't fire another shot in anger for the rest of the battle, but, well, at least they're all sort of gathered around him. And it's good to have all the chaps together again in a sort of camaraderie way. Yes, camaraderie sort of a thing. Yes, something like that. And then, let's see, what do we got? Those dice, I couldn't squeeze them in. They actually belong to those chaps there, and those belong to those chaps there. Now, happily for the French, both these units down here are indeed Jaegers, so they do not have dedicated guns, so they've each got 6 dice. Of course, they're testing morale because they're being charged by cavalry. There was an elaborate series of cavalry movements that was used to... You had people charging in all sorts of different... this way and that way and hither and thither, to be able to get themselves into the right position. And yes, I did check that the whole business... hang on a second, what are we doing? I don't have to go into detail on that. No, okay. So, right, so these chaps, of course, will be meleeing here. These chaps have gone in. What are they? Morale 6. So, well, we'll see what happens there. That's a pretty straightforward one there. We've got 2 here meleeing these chaps, all right. And then we've also got 2 of cuirassiers meleeing the grenadiers, the plucky grenadiers, who are not morale 6, but they've been awfully plucky so far. And then even the light cavalry threw themselves down here at the jolly old... Jolly old artillery up there on the hill. Good luck with that. And then, of course, we've got two brigades of dragoons that were over here. Finally, who are they? They belong to... let's see. Who do they belong to? Huh. Oh, there we go. Klein. Yeah. Klein. Yes. Interesting name for a French divisional commander. I mean, but who knows? Obviously, they have a lot of allies and that sort of thing. But sounds Germanic, obviously, doesn't it? So, have to look him up. Right. So anyway, they've just gone straight forward. Now, that they're not in a great position there because the enemy's uphill and the enemy has 7 melee dice and they have 4 melee dice. So, but the point is we're trying to score those final last 2 hits on von der Ostensachen's division so as to exhaust them. And then these chaps are just firing away. Yes, they're going to get a lot of fire back at them, but they're firing away to try and achieve the same thing, obviously. Okay. And then what else have we got? I think that just about covers it. So let's do some morale tests. And here we are down here with, what is it? Bielozersk. Yeah, Regiment Bielozersk. Who are already disordered, as we can see. So they're rolling up. Now they are being fired on from the flank, and they are also disordered. So that's -2 off their morale. Takes their morale down to 3. So let's see what they do. And they're okay. Look at that. They got lucky this time. All right. And then we have the jolly old cuirassier going in there against the Jaegers. And, ooh, not looking good. Hang on a second. Let's see. Well, I think they're okay. Yeah, because the Jaegers, they're not hitting them uphill. No, the French have no disadvantage there. So they have a morale of 6, which means, of course, they can't fail. So they rolled 6, but so what? Now, these chaps here have a morale of 5. I don't see they have any disadvantage in what's happening to them. So they've got a morale of 5. And they rolled and they're fine. Okay. These chaps here, they're not being hit from the flank because of their positioning. They're, they're secure and all that sort of thing. And so they've got a morale of 5. Let's roll them up. They're just about made it. Right, okay. So the morale, everyone's morale is holding so far. Here go the cavalry. They're going in with a morale of 7. No need to roll that one. They can't fail that. These chaps are going in, they've got a morale of 6. We're going to do the same thing. There's no need to roll that one. Okay, let's move down. Right, way over there, the French dragoons, who are permanently disordered, testing their morale because they're being fired on once again by the French. The French can fire at them, even though it's the Russians can fire at them, even though it's the French turn because they are within close range. So roll those up. They've got a morale of 5, but they are disordered, so they're morale of 4. And they've managed to get away all right. Okay, they've managed to pass their test. We've got the cuirassier here. And now the thing about, I should explain this in Volley and Bayonet, is that the way that it's rather unusual, the way that the crest line of hills is determined, in the sense that these 2 units here, for example, who are charging those chaps, they came from over here. Well, of course, you can see where they came from because they can change facing, but then they have to go directly straight towards the enemy. So they obviously came from here, and they came from there like that. And what you do is you imagine a line that's perpendicular to their front, their line of sight to the enemy. So that was sort of down this way, like that. And then you run that line through the center of the hill. So if the center of the hill is there, say that point right there, you go like that, okay? And as you can see, they have contacted the enemy before we got to that line. So that means that that's taken to be the crest line. So that means that the enemy is... Yeah, there's 2 key points there, that's right. It means that the enemy was visible, it wasn't on the far side of the hill, but it also means, of course, that the enemy is uphill. I've got to refresh my memory on what that does to the morale test. Yeah, and they are secure because they're stationary. They get a +1 because they're defending higher ground. They're being attacked by an enemy that had to come uphill to attack them. They, on the other hand, don't get a negative for having to attack uphill, as it were. Okay, so it's like one-sided. So they get a +1. That means they have a morale of 6, which means that they can't fail a morale test. So we won't worry about their morale. Okay, let's hang on a second. So we'll take that off. They've passed their morale test. Then we have, I picked up that die from there, didn't I? I picked it up and didn't roll it. Right, okay. They have a morale of 6, but they have no negatives. We've already established that. So there we go. They've passed their test. You don't have to roll for them. We don't have to roll for them either. No negatives. Okay. Let's see. What else have we got? Now, those chaps are morale 5. Now, they do get a disadvantage, I believe, for, isn't it, the fact that they are unlimbered artillery's front. Yes. So they get a negative, the light cavalry does. And yeah, the artillery is stationary and supported, so they don't get the negative modifier. Okay. So it's just, well, the artillery is also uphill, isn't it? I think we've established that pretty well. Okay, so the artillery is going to have a +1 for higher ground, and their attackers get a -1. Okay, so that means the artillery would have a morale of 6, so that means they couldn't fail. Okay, put those back. They have now got a morale of 4 because they are attacking the front of artillery. So they might get into trouble. We'll see. No, they're okay. Good Lord, everybody's passing. Nobody's failed a morale test yet, have they? No. Okay. They've got a morale of 5. There's no modifier there. Yes, the enemy is uphill, but that's going to give them a bonus. So we roll for them, morale of 5. They're fine. Roll for the remaining dragoons, who also have a morale of 5. They've passed. These chaps here have a morale of 5, but because they're uphill, they've got a morale of 6. They can't fail, and the same goes for them. And everyone has completed their morale tests. Yes, and well, it's still the same day here in playing the game in Wales. So apologies for the background noise. Temperature had picked up a bit. And so I had to open the window and turn on the fan. Yes. So, moving on. Let's see what we got. We do some pointing with the old, good old pipe, the trusty pipe. Yes. Right. Actually, there's no need to point because we're going to do the combat right now. So help us. Okay. So, we have got these chaps are able to fire, or actually... I'm going to say, no, I'm going to do the French a favour. They're not able to fire. No. I mean, that's really pushing the point, wouldn't it be? Because look, 45 degree, handy dandy, of course, 45 degrees, all you just go diagonally like that. So where can they fire? Where's their firing arc? Well, there's the edge of their firing arc coming down that like that. And you're sort of coming down here. It's just a tiny, maybe a tiny clips that... No, I'm not having it. Okay. This is not a competition. You know, this is my game, and I'm playing it the way I want to. Right. So I'm going to say they can't shoot at them, because although they're in their arc of fire, they're far too far away, obviously. So they can't fire at anyone. That's what I'm going to say. Right. So coming in then. Right. From here, they're not disordered. They're firing at them. Looking for a 6. Didn't get it. Okay. Right. Here we go. Musketry coming in. Misses. Alright, just ask the misses. Yeah, anyway. One shot coming in from him. This will be close range. And it's a miss. Look at that. Let's get that pipe out of the way. Right. And then close range coming in from there. Come along. Let's get something done. There's a hit. Close range hit. Okay. No saving throws. So that's another hit on Bielorzesk. One more hit. And, my dear chaps and chapettes, that's it. They only have 3 strength points. They have been eliminated. Right. So there we are. The sad fate of Regiment Bielorzesk. Eliminated. And so I think that means Kamensky, he started out with 10, so I think he's got 7 more hits before he becomes exhausted. Down here, however, good lord, Bagavut. It only takes 2 more hits to exhaust Bagavut. So I'd say there's a good chance of that might happen. We shall see. Alright, we'll get on with it. Right, Russian artillery firing at the dragoons there. Let's see, close range, no modifiers. Oh well, no, they are cavalry though, so they can... yep, okay, there's a hit there, so the cavalry, they can attempt to grab a saving throw if they retire. We went through all this before, so if they retire 600 yards from the enemy. Okay, let's do that, because they are going to go for that saving throw for sure. So there we go, they've retired 600 yards from their position, directly away from the enemy, which is those chaps there. So now we can roll the saving throw and see if they save. And they did not save. Okay, so they are hit, and we'll mark the hit. Okay, so that was Latour, belonging to Beaumont's division. Okay, only takes 2 hits on his division to exhaust his division. So anyway, there they are back there. Let's see, so now we can get into some juicy, crucial melees. I think we're going to start off with the big one here, right there. So they're going to be dividing their dice between the 2. Okay, nobody's disordered. So sort of off we go, I suppose. Right, so let's have 3 shots, or 3 melee blows against the dragoons from the Russians. And we're looking for 6s, plain and simple. Nothing there. Okay, and then we've got 3 against the cuirassiers, and we got nothing there. Ooh, starting to look like highly probable the Russians will lose this melee. All right, in go the dragoons, in with the steel. Nothing. Oh boy, oh boy, and in with the cuirassiers. Yes, although as I say, they should actually be they are actually carabiniers, so I won't call them cuirassiers, even though that's what the models are. As I said, I've got a box of carabiniers, but I haven't painted them up. So, right, but these are morale 7, so that would be a factor if it's a melee tie. It would be a significant factor, but it doesn't matter because they scored a hit. Oh my gosh! With all that meleeing going on, there was 1 hit produced. But that means that the Russians lose the melee, right? Well, good lord, what a difference a melee makes, as you might say. Yes, because, right, what you do when you lose a melee is you have to retreat. And you retreat away from the middle of the mass. If you're being attacked by multiple units, the middle of the mass of the multiple units. Okay. Things have developed since that happened, but basically these chaps were further back a bit, and the middle of the mass was about there-ish. Well, sort of about there, basically. So they retreated away from that, and in so doing, they did indeed pass through 2 opposite sides of these chaps here. They only clipped the corner of them, so they didn't do 2 opposite sides there, and they ended up back here. That means they disordered them because they were in the first half of that move, and they disordered them as well. So they're back here disordered with their 1 hit, and they've just become disordered, and they've just become disordered. This, of course, was part of the cunning plan, as discussed before. If we hit them on the end there, can we force them through them, disordering them before this melee is resolved? Okay, so they are now disordered, which also means, of course, that they've lost their precious stationary status as well. So actually, come to think of it, I have got to remove some dice, haven't I? Yes, there we go. Right, so they are now simply... because they don't have the dedicated guns. Yeah, they're not stationary. So they are indeed meleeing with 4 dice instead of 6. Right. A very different situation. Now, the other thing, of course, that's happened, as we've seen before, happened with the Dragoons earlier, is in this case, it's the Carabiniers have decided to do a cavalry breakthrough, which will make them permanently disordered. They've thrown them so they just carry it forward, and they've thrown themselves... into the melee here with these chaps here. Now, the reason I've done this is I'm going to mark them with a permanent disorder, but before they do that, before that is counted, we test their morale. But they've got a morale of 7, so nothing's going to interfere with that, come to think of it. So there we are then. What is that? Yeah, there we go. So we've marked their permanent disorder. Yes, they're the best unit that the French have in terms of cavalry, but it's worth it this time because we're trying to put the boot into Bagavoot here, because right now he's got 1 more. I think he's 1. Where is he? He's taken 2 hits. He's got 1. He's taken 2 hits this time? Yeah. 1 more hit and his division is exhausted, which is the key thing that we're trying to do here. Okay. Right, so the melee then, that means we have to drum up some melee dice for the old French. Okay, so those will go there. Attacking here, attacking here. Oh, that's right, they also get the bonus of they are attacking from the flank. They are indeed. So, wait a minute. That's a melee thing though, isn't it? That's only a morale thing, that's right. And they don't have to test again. If they weren't already in a melee, in contact with the enemy, they would have to test, but they don't have to test, okay, because they've already been tested once. Right. So, that's what it says in the rules, black and white. Okay, so now they get to fight back, of course. Where's my tray? There it is. Against the jolly old French. So we'll have them going against the Carabiniers with 2 dice, and they've got nothing there. And then 2 dice against the cuirassiers to their front, and they've got a hit. Okay, finally, there we go. So there's a hit on the cuirassier. All right, and then we have the cuirassiers going in themselves. Whoops. Okay, with 4 dice against the Jaegers. Oh, nothing there. Oh dear. Oh dear. This would be very disappointing from the French if they don't get this one. Because this is their chance. They need 1 hit to exhaust Bagavoot. Oh my god. They didn't manage it. Good lord. Oh, good lord, lord. They lost the melee. Good lord. And they are permanently disordered. So if they lost the melee, if you're disordered, you rout. So they're routed. Oh my god. Now that is what I call a turn up for the books. We would not have anticipated that, would we? No. It's at times like this I always think, wait a minute, did I just do something wrong? This doesn't seem to make sense. Did I do something wrong? But in the end, now of course it's in the hands of jolly old Fortuna Imperatrix Mundi. You know? You ask Karl Orff, he'll tell you. Right. So let's get that sorted out. Okay, and there we see the result from a somewhat different angle. So the plucky chaps here, they held their resolve. Basically, I mean, let's get down to brass tacks here. Basically, we rolled the dice and nobody scored a hit apart from the Jaegers on the Carabinier. Yes. So there we go. That was the surprising thing. That there was just that one hit was the odd man out anyway. So they routed them because they were already permanently disordered because they had chosen to continue their cavalry breakthrough. That's right. They conduct a cavalry breakthrough. So they were there. So they routed away from the enemy. They ended up back here. That means that we can say goodbye to them for the rest of the battle, obviously. Their divisional commander is up here, Nonsuti. And I don't know if there's anyone down there that could command them. I don't see anyone, no. So, well, they're routed anyway, so there we go. Then we had a retreat move rather, from the other chaps of the same division. And they ended up back here. They didn't pass through them in the first half of the move, so therefore they did not disorder them. Okay. There's the remaining brigade from Nonsuti's division, which is certainly, ready to pounce in the final French turn. The only question there would be, could the Russians, get something in the way or something like that? Well, they've got the light cavalry which is disordered, and they've got the dragoons over here, which they can maneuver down here. They can't attack with them, as we said, but they can get in the way of the enemy, so to speak. Because now, of all things, Bagavut, there's the remnants of his division there. I think it's both those units there. I'm pretty sure it is. Yeah, I think that's Bagavut. It's not Kamensky. One more hit will exhaust them. That's all they needed, was one more hit. Oh well. So now we come down here, where with all these dice around, we can imagine a real bloodbath down here. But, well, we shall see. We'll see if we roll a handful of ones and twos again. So, we've got the big contest going in here. We've got 2 units of cuirassiers are up against the plucky grenadiers, who, their morale 5, have been holding their own for sure. Let's see. So let's get some things a bit organised here. Right, so we've got the grenadiers. They've got 7 dice. And they have to be divided as evenly as possible between the 2 attacking enemy units. So obviously someone's going to get 4 dice and someone's going to get 3, so let's have 4 going against them, because if they could hit them again, I'm guessing they would probably, D'Espagne, they would probably exhaust his division, and that sounds a bit tasty. So, Grenadiers against D'Espagne's chaps over here, right. Nothing. Okay. French got off lightly there, okay, and then we have the Grenadiers with 3 against these chaps from, again, D'Espagne, okay. Same division, okay. Nothing. Ooh, not good for the Russians this time, not good. So, let's see if the French can win this melee. All they've got to do is score 1 hit. First we'll have these chaps over here on the French right. And they... 3 hits, would you look at that? Would you look at that? Oh, that's a pretty sight to a Frenchman, Okay. All right, and then we got the remaining cuirassier. Oh, there we go. Okay. In they go with the cold steel. And there's another hit. Now, let's see. The Grenadiers have already been hit once. So, that's 4 hits. I think there's a good chance here that we could see a division. Well, we know Osterman Tolstoy's division is now exhausted. No, not Osterman Tolstoy. Von der Ostensachen. We know it will be exhausted when we compute that at the end of the turn. But also, very good chance of a morale collapse. Okay. So, okay, four hits on those chaps. Let's sort that out. And there we are. Grenadiers are gone. Finally, yes, they were plucky, but they were finally overrun by the 2 units of cuirassiers. All right. So, let's see. Is there anything clever that should be done here in terms of which one attacks first? I'm not sure. I mean, I think if they were defeated and they had to retreat, I think because they're in a secure situation with the infantry, I think they do actually get to do a retreat move. And that would mean that they would go through them, but they wouldn't go through 2 opposite sides of them, so they wouldn't disorder them. So it really doesn't make much difference, does it? You usually start off with the best bet first. They're going to be hitting on 4, 5s and 6s. So probability says that there's basically more or less, as far as I understand things, a probability of 1, as it were, because they're 2 50-50 chances of scoring a hit on them. They're looking for 6s, so yeah, they have worse odds than they do. And then again over here, of course, they've got much worse odds than they do. Right. So, oh well, I'll go down the line, what the heck. Okay, in we go with the light cavalry against the artillery. Nobody's disordered. Off we go. Nothing. Okay. All right, let's tidy up a bit. Not looking good for the light cavalry. Here's the Russian response. And they've got a hit. Notice that there's no saving throw here because the saving throw is just for fire against cavalry, and they can retreat and all that sort of thing, retire away from the enemy and do that. So they have lost the melee, so they're going to take a hit and they have to retreat.